A man who jogged every night in a quiet park kept hearing footsteps behind him perfectly matching his pace. When he slowed down, the footsteps slowed. When he ran faster, they sped up. But whenever he turned around, no one was there. One night, frustrated, he stopped completely. The footsteps did not stop. They kept approaching. He ran out of the park and never used that track again. A week later, he learned someone had died there during a late-night robbery. Their last moments spent running for their life on that very track. Have you ever been out for a late-night jog? The only sounds being your own breathing and the rhythmic slap of your shoes on the pavement. It's peaceful, right? Almost meditative. But what if you started hearing another set of footsteps, perfectly in sync with yours, but when you look back, there's no one there? Tonight, we're exploring the chilling tale of the Phantom Jogger, a story that might make you think twice before hitting the track after dark. This isn't just one isolated incident. Reports have surfaced from running trails all over the world, from the misty parks of England to the suburban tracks of America. Runners, often alone, describe the unsettling feeling of being followed. It starts subtly. You think it's just an echo, the sound of your own feet bouncing off the trees. But then the sound gets closer, more distinct. It's the sound of running shoes on gravel, on asphalt, on dirt, right behind you. Yet, every time you stop, every time you spin around, the path is empty. The sound vanishes. Let's dive into one of the most well-known accounts. A woman named Clara was training for a marathon. Her routine involved a pre-dawn run along a secluded river path. For weeks, everything was normal. Then, one Tuesday morning, she heard it. Footsteps. Heavy ones, like a large man running. They matched her pace exactly. When she sped up, they sped up. When she slowed, they slowed. Her heart pounded, not from the exercise, but from pure fear. She whipped her head around, phone, flashlight cutting through the gloom. Nothing. Just the silent, sleeping trees and the dark, flowing river. The next day, she tried to convince herself it was her imagination. Maybe she was just stressed about the marathon. But as she rounded the first bend of the trail, the footsteps were back. Louder, this time. Closer. It felt like someone was breathing down her neck. She didn't dare look back. She just ran, faster than she ever had before, sprinting all the way back to her car, locking the doors, and gasping for air. She never ran on that trail again. But the question remains, what was chasing her? Skeptics will tell you it's auditive pareidolia, the brain creating patterns from random noise. Or perhaps it's hypervigilance, an over-awareness of your surroundings when you feel vulnerable. And it's true, running alone in the dark can put anyone on edge. Your senses are heightened. Every snapped twig sounds like a footstep. Every shadow looks like a figure. Our minds are powerful storytellers, and sometimes they tell us ghost stories to explain the unexplained. It's a natural defense mechanism. But what about the cases where there's more than just a sound? Some runners report seeing a fleeting shape in their peripheral vision, a shadow that darts away the moment they try to focus on it. Others have even felt a cold spot, a sudden drop in temperature as the phantom footsteps draw near. A man in Oregon claimed he was running when he felt a hand brush his shoulder. Espunarund. Ready for a confrontation, only to find himself completely alone on the deserted track, the morning fog swirling around his feet. These stories often share common elements. The location is usually isolated, a place with its own history. Old railway lines converted to trails, paths that cut through ancient forests, or parks built on forgotten grounds. Could these places hold some kind of residual energy? A psychic echo of someone who used to run there? Maybe a dedicated athlete whose spirit is forever bound to their favorite route, still trying to beat their personal best, even after death. It's a romantic, if unsettling, thought. Let's consider the psychological aspect more deeply. When we run, we enter an altered state of consciousness. The runner's high is a real phenomenon, where endorphins flood the brain. Could this state make us more susceptible to suggestion, more open to perceiving things that aren't physically there. It's possible that the combination of physical exertion, solitude, and low-light conditions creates the perfect cocktail for a paranormal experience. A hallucination born from our deepest, most primal fears of being hunted. But then you get the stories that defy easy explanation. A group of friends running together, and they all hear the extra set of footsteps. A runner who captures an EVP, an electronic voice phenomenon, on their phone's recorder while the footsteps are happening, a faint, raspy voice whispering, "Keep up." These accounts are harder to dismiss as just a single person's imagination running wild. When the experience is shared, it gains a chilling layer of credibility. It moves from being in your head to being out there. So, what do you do if you find yourself on a lonely track and you hear those phantom footsteps starting up behind you? Most accounts say that acknowledging the presence is a bad idea. Don't speak to it. Don't turn around aggressively. The best advice seems to be to calmly and steadily increase your pace. Make your way to a more populated or well-lit area and get yourself to safety. Whether it's a ghost, a trick of the mind, or something else entirely, your safety comes first. The mystery can be solved later. A couple walking through a small neighborhood park noticed a man sitting on a bench around midnight. He wore a black coat and sat perfectly straight, staring at the pond. They passed him once, twice, 3 times. Each time, he was in the same exact position, not moving an inch. Finally, the boyfriend nervously said, "Sir, are you okay?" The man slowly turned his head. His face was pale. Too pale and blurry, as if out of focus. The couple ran. When they looked back, the entire bench was empty. Later, they learned the city had removed that bench years ago after a drowning incident. But in the dark, they had seen someone sitting on it anyway. Have you ever had that feeling deep in your gut that something is just off? Like a subtle shift in the world around you that you can't quite put your finger on. For one man, that feeling became a terrifying reality. All because he sat on the wrong bench. It was a perfectly normal Tuesday. The sun was shining, birds were singing, the usual stuff. A man, let's call him Alex, finished his lunch and decided to get some fresh air. He walked to the small park near his office, a place he went to almost every day. He found an empty bench, sat down, and pulled out his phone to scroll through social media. He didn't notice anything unusual at first. It was just a bench, like any other, painted green, a little weathered, with a view of the duck pond. After a few minutes, he looked up from his screen. That's when the first strange thing happened. An elderly woman he'd seen a moment ago, feeding pigeons by the pond, was now standing completely still, facing away from him. Her bag of breadcrumbs was spilled on the ground. It was odd, but he shrugged it off. Maybe she just dropped her bag. He went back to his phone, but that nagging feeling was starting to bubble up. He looked up again. The woman was gone. Vanished. And the pigeons were all gone too. The park, which had been bustling with people just minutes before, was suddenly quiet. Eerily quiet. He stood up, a shiver running down his spine despite the warm sun. He looked around. Everything seemed normal, yet profoundly wrong. The swings were still. The children's laughter he'd heard earlier had been replaced by an unnerving silence. It decided Ed had enough fresh air and started walking back towards the street. But the path seemed longer. The familiar office building that should have been just a few hundred feet away was nowhere in sight. He turned back to look at the bench. From this distance, he could see something he hadn't noticed before. Scratched into the wood, almost hidden by the green paint, were words. He couldn't make them out from where he stood. Curiosity, or perhaps a dreadful sense of compulsion, pulled him back. He had to know what it said. As he got closer, the air grew colder. The world seemed to fade at the edges, his vision tunneling towards the bench. He could see the carvings now. They weren't just words, they were names. Docents of Tim etched over one another. A chaotic jumble of letters. And below the names, a single, chilling sentence. If you're reading this, you sat down to... Panic flared in his chest. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Espunaron, desperate to find an exit, a way back to his normal, boring Tuesday. But the park was gone. All he could see in every direction was an endless sea of identical green benches, stretching out to a misty, gray horizon. Each bench was empty, waiting. He was alone, utterly and completely alone, in a world made of nothing but benches. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. He started to run, blindly, desperately, from one bench to the next, but the scenery never changed. It was an infinite, silent maze. He eventually collapsed, exhausted and terrified, onto another bench. As he caught his breath, he looked down at the wood beneath him. Freshly carved, as if by an invisible hand, a new name was appearing in the wood. His name, Alex. We may never know what happened to Alex, or to the countless others whose names were carved into that first bench. It serves as a haunting reminder that sometimes the most ordinary places hide the darkest secrets. A night security guard at a public park in Lahore reported something he never forgot. Every night around 2 a.m., one specific swing third from the left would start moving on its own. Not lightly, but violently, as if someone invisible was pumping it with full force. One night, he finally walked closer, recording it on his phone. The moment he stepped within a few feet, the swing stopped instantly, hanging perfectly still. He whispered, "Who's there?" A child's giggle echoed behind him. When he turned around, the entire playground was empty. His phone recording captured the giggle, but not a single person in sight. Have you ever seen something you just can't explain? Something that defies all logic and sends a shiver down your spine? Well, I'm about to tell you a story that does just that. It's about a swing, an ordinary playground swing that moves all by itself. Our story takes place in a small, quiet town, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and nothing much ever happens. In the center of this town, there's an old park, a little weathered by time, with a small playground. This playground has a set of swings, rusted at the chains, the seats worn smooth from years of use. For generations, kids have laughed and played here. But recently, something strange has been happening. One of the swings has started moving on its own. It doesn't matter if it's a windy day or completely still, day or night, rain or shine. This one sways back and forth, as if an invisible child is sitting on it, pushing off with invisible feet. At first, people dismissed it. It's just the wind, they'd say, or maybe it's an optical illusion. But as more and more people witnessed it, the whispers started. Locals began sharing their own theories. Some said it was a prank, some kind of hidden mechanism designed to spook people. A few tech-savvy teenagers even went to investigate, armed with cameras and gadgets, looking for wires or magnets. They found nothing. Absolutely nothing. The swing was just a normal swing, but it kept moving. Then, the stories started to get darker. The old-timers in town began to recall a local legend, a story that had been passed down but mostly forgotten. They spoke of a little girl named Lily who loved that park more than anything. She would spend hours on that very swing, her laughter echoing through the trees. The story goes that one day she was swinging higher and higher, trying to touch the sky, when a sudden tragic accident occurred. She was gone too soon, and her spirit, they said, was forever tied to her favorite spot. Could it be true? Is the moving swing the playful spirit of a young girl, forever enjoying her favorite pastime? Or is it something else entirely? A group of paranormal investigators heard about the legend and decided to visit the park. They set up their equipment, EMF meters, thermal cameras, and audio recorders, and waited. As night fell and the park grew silent, the swing continued its steady, rhythmic motion. Suddenly, their equipment went wild. The EMF meters started screaming, the temperature dropped, and on their audio recorders, they captured a faint, almost inaudible sound. When they played it back, amplifying the recording, they heard what sounded like a child's giggle. It was soft, distant, but unmistakable. They were stunned. They had captured what they believed to be evidence of Lily's spirit. The news spread like wildfire. The story of the haunted swing turned the small town into a tourist attraction. People came from all over, hoping to catch a glimpse of the supernatural phenomenon. Some came as skeptics, determined to debunk the myth. Others came as believers, hoping to feel a connection to the other side. One evening, a young woman named Clara visited the park. She wasn't a ghost hunter or a thrill seeker. She was a historian, fascinated by local folklore. As she watched the swing move in the twilight, she felt a sense of sadness, not fear. She thought about Lily and the life she never got to live. On a whim, she walked over to the empty swing next to the moving one and sat down. She began to swing gently, side by side with the ghostly presence. And then, something incredible happened. For the first time, the swinging motion of the haunted swing changed. It seemed to synchronize with Clara's, as if two friends were playing together. A sense of peace settled over the park. The air, which had felt heavy and cold, suddenly felt lighter, warmer. The people watching were speechless. Since that day, the swing still moves, but something has changed. It no longer feels eerie or unsettling. Instead, it feels ... peaceful, playful. It's as if Clara's simple act of kindness, of joining in the play, brought comfort to the... A man who jogged every night in a quiet park kept hearing footsteps behind him perfectly matching his pace. When he slowed down, the footsteps slowed. When he ran faster, they sped up. But whenever he turned around, no one was there. One night, frustrated, he stopped completely. The footsteps did not stop. They kept approaching. He ran out of the park and never used that track again. A week later, he learned someone had died there during a late-night robbery. Their last moments spent running for their life on that very track. The city lights usually feel so alive, a comforting hum against the quiet of the night. But not tonight. Tonight, the silence on this jogging track feels heavy. I love my late-night runs. It's my time to unwind, to just be with my thoughts and the steady rhythm of my own 2 feet. The track is a perfect loop, familiar and safe. Or so I thought. It started subtly, a faint sound, almost lost in the rustle of leaves. I paused, taking out an earbud. Nothing. Just the wind. I shook my head. Probably just my imagination running wild after that horror movie marathon last weekend. I started running again, picking up my pace. The air was crisp. The moon a bright sliver in the sky. It was peaceful. Then I heard it again. This time, clearer. A soft, rhythmic thud. It wasn't my footsteps. Mine were quick, light on the rubberized surface. This sound was different, slower and heavier, like someone was dragging their feet. I slowed to a walk, my heart starting to thrum a nervous beat against my ribs. I turned around. The track stretched out behind me, empty and bathed in the pale glow of the lampposts. I stood there for a full minute, listening. Silence. My logical mind kicked in. It's an old track. Maybe it's just the structure settling, or an animal in the nearby bushes. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the irrational fear creeping up my spine. I told myself to stop being silly and finish my run. I started jogging again, determined to ignore it, but the sound came back, and this time it was closer. Thud, scrape, thud, scrape. It was a limp. A distinct unabengait. It was following me. A cold dread washed over me, a primal fear that I couldn't rationalize away. I didn't dare look back this time. I just ran. My lungs burned. My legs screamed, but I couldn't stop. The sound was right behind me now. Thud, scrape. So close I could almost feel the vibration through the soles of my shoes. Who would be out here at this hour, walking with a limp? And why were they following me? My mind raced with terrifying possibilities. The sound was keeping perfect pace with me, never getting closer, never falling behind. It was like a shadow I couldn't shake. I could hear it over the frantic pounding of my own heart, over the gasping breaths I was sucking in. I risked a glance over my shoulder, and my blood ran cold. There was no one there. Absolutely no one. The track was completely deserted for as far as I could see. But the sound was still there. Right behind me. Thud. Scrape. It was impossible. My mind was breaking. Was I going crazy? The sound was so real, so tangible. I could almost picture the person or thing that was making it. I ran faster, pushing myself harder than I ever had before. I had to get away. I finally reached the end of the track, stumbling out onto the brightly lit street. The sounds of traffic, the distant chatter of people, it was the most beautiful symphony I had ever heard. I leaned against a lamppost, gasping for air, my whole body trembling. I waited, listening, my eyes fixed on the entrance to the track. The thudding and scraping had stopped. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the noise itself. I never went back to that track at night. Sometimes, when I'm out walking, even in broad daylight, I hear it. A faint, rhythmic thud. You just can't outrun. Thanks for watching, and if you have any spooky stories of your own, share them in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there.